Good morning. It's a funny gospel we have this weekend. It starts off so beautiful, so sweet. Do not be afraid, little flock. The Father's going to give you the kingdom. Then it ends with severe beatings, right? Like, okay, all right. So before I get into the gospel, though, I want to just say how awesome it is to have Father Jeff Barnish with us this morning. It's just a little context that's pretty darn cool. So Father Jeff and I, and Bob here, raise your hand, Bob. There's Bob. We grew up we were on the same street together, all three of us growing up. Been friends since 5th grade, and it's just a pretty awesome thing to be able to celebrate Mass with such a longtime friend, doing First Communion for your son, your oldest son, baptizing your boy after this Mass. It's just enough to make a grown man cry. It's really, really, really cool. So Father Jeff and I, we graduated, and Bob, we graduated at Hudson High School, same year, 2007. Don't do the math, that will make some of you feel very old. But we graduated high school 2007. Father Jeff had the courage to go to the seminary right after high school. I did a little detour at the University of Dayton before I made my way to the seminary. But he was a huge part of why I ever ended up in the seminary. His witness, his joy as a seminarian was so annoying to me as a disillusioned college freshman who thought I would be able to find happiness on my own. And he was so dang happy. And I was like, I just want what you got, man. So he's a huge reason why I went to the seminary, why I'm a priest. So he spent his first 4 years at St. Bernadette's in Westlake, and now he's studying moral theology in Rome. He'll be gone another year studying theology in Rome to come back and be an assistant to Father Joe Koopman as a moral theologian of the diocese. He's wicked smart, and I'm just so grateful that he's here. So it's awesome. It's really, really humbling and awesome. So, okay, let's get into this gospel before I cry, talking about old-time things. Here we go. So, Pope Benedict, who's our Pope Emeritus, he said in one of his homilies when he was reflecting on the gospel where Jesus heals that deaf-mute man. Remember this scene where the man is deaf and mute, and Jesus does all those very weird things where he spits, puts his fingers in the guy's ear, touches the guy's tongue, and we hear Jesus utter this word that has remained untranslated in Aramaic all throughout the centuries. We hear Jesus' cry, Ephatha, that is, be opened, be opened. Pope Benedict, reflecting on that, he said that in that groan, bubbling up from the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Christ the bridegroom, he says in a certain sense that word is a distillation of his entire messianic mission. It's a distillation, a summary of his deepest desire to see his bride opened. To see his bride opened. Yes, of course, he came to defeat our enemy, to defeat sin and death, to liberate us from the powers of sin, hell, Satan, all of that, to wage war on our behalf. But that wasn't the complete story. That's not the complete picture. That's not the nectar of the gospel, not just simply the liberation from sin, death, hell, Satan. If you look at the book of Revelation, what you see there is after Christ defeats the dragon, after he's Christus Victor, after he's Christ the warrior, the book of Revelation culminates with a wedding. Christus Victor, Christ the warrior, becomes Christus Sponsus, Christ the spouse. The book of Revelation culminates in communion. It culminates in union. It culminates in Jesus' desire to unite himself to his bride, that bubbling up from his heart, the deepest desire is, please be open to the gift that I want to bestow upon you. Just to, again, context, zoom out for a second. This is the whole scope of the entire story of salvation history. From very beginning to end, right? From the very beginning in Genesis, humanity was in this posture of perfect docility, perfect receptivity, perfect openness before God's generous love. And in the seduction of the enemy, they came in and he suggested a lie into Eve's heart, into Adam's heart, which caused them to doubt the goodness of God. Perhaps he's not trustworthy. And in that doubt arose fear, and in that fear arose this self-protection. They grasped and they turned away from the Lord. They closed themselves. They hid themselves, cutting themselves off from the surging gift of the Father's heart. So all throughout the Old Testament, all throughout the entire story of the Old Testament, what you see there is a God who is patiently wooing the heart of his bride, humanity, back into this posture of open trust. I really am good. I really am trustworthy. a posture of receptivity, a posture of surrender. And what is this openness that he desires in us? I open myself to let you in, to let you see and know everything that's in there. I open myself to give you access, to let myself be affected by you, to be touched by you. In all the places where I've built walls and defenses, I lay down my arms, I lay down the walls, I let myself be accessible to you, vulnerable to you. Like those deepest parts of me, the deepest parts where I carry shame and fear and doubt and wounds and all of that stuff, those most fertile places in me, I open that up to your life, to your love. I open myself up. Like his deepest desire is for us to experience his love in those places where we think we are most unlovable. St. Augustine said one time, I stared into my deepest sin, my deepest darkness, and I saw you there, and it dazzled me. Like that's the Lord's desire. And it furthermore, like it's not just simply an openness to let him in, it's an openness, like I'm open to surrendering control, to letting you lead, to going where you point out. I'm open to having you get your way. Lord, I'm open to your plans. I'm open to your ways which are so inscrutable and so mysterious. I'm open to doing things your way. Like there's so much that we want to be in control of. There's so much. But Lord, I'm willing to take the risk of letting you have your way with my life. You know, all throughout the scriptures, never did the Father ever spell out the full picture, the full plan, like we want. Like, Lord, where are we going? Where's this headed? He never spells it out. Like he does with Abraham, so he does with us, which is, like Abraham, I'm going to shine just enough light a few feet in front of you. I'm going to ask you to keep walking on the path that's illuminated. He never illuminates the full landscape. He just says, will you walk these next 3 steps with me? Will you be open to walking these next 3 steps? Are you going to let yourself be that dependent, that trusting? Will you risk being open? All right, friends, why am I talking about all this? Well, because in our gospel, Jesus has this incredible reflection. He shares with us like what we ought to be doing, like as his disciples, and how we ought to respond when he comes knocking, right? He says we're supposed to be like these servants who have their loins girt, their lamps lit, they're vigilant. And they're vigilant not out of fear, they're vigilant out of expectation, hopeful expectation. And those servants, they are to open, it says, immediately when the master comes and knocks. They're to open immediately. Friends, that's faith. That's faith. This is a parish of incredible faith. I see it in action. I hear it in conversation. I see it in the devotion that we have to the Blessed Sacrament. I hear it in the way that hearts are poured out in the confessional. This is a parish of immense faith. But I'm telling you, as your father, like the Father wants more for us. And please hear me correctly. I'm not saying the Father wants more from you. No, the Father wants more for us. He's not disappointed. He's not cruel. He's not demanding. He's just saying, I want to take you deeper. I want to take you farther. And how? Like the Father, as I was praying about this week, the word that just kept coming up in my prayer was the word risk. Risk. Friends, in this fallen world, where disappointment just seems like it's just around the corner, right? Where relationships, they seem to fall apart, and friends betray, and where vows get broken, and love gets lost, and where loved ones die unexpectedly, where longed-for pregnancies are lost in miscarriage, all of that, where it seems like in this world where there's such disappointment, it seems like the most rational thing to do is just don't open the door to your heart. Don't let yourself be affected. Let them knock. Let their knuckles bleed on the outside of the door. Don't let anybody in. I'm not opening myself up to that. I'm not letting anyone in anymore. It's too scary. It hurts too much. Like, what if I open up to Jesus and he finds my heart repulsive? What if I open up to Jesus and he starts leading me into places I don't want to go? What if he leads me into suffering? What if he leads me somewhere, like, what if he leads me into something? What if he opens me up to something and then takes it away just as fast as he gave it? Like, I don't know if I can handle that. Like the way that I think so many of us live our faith is by looking through the little peephole in the door. He's there knocking on the outside, and it's like, okay, you stay there, and I'll stay in here. And I'll respect you, and I'll worship you, and I'll say I belong to you, but I just don't want you to get that close. I don't want you to have that much access. I don't want to be that vulnerable. I don't want you that close to my life, that close to my plans, that close to my future. And I don't want you to get your hands upon my future. I don't want you to get your hands upon my marriage. I don't want you to get your hands upon my fertility. I don't want you to get your hands meddling in my life too much. You stay on the outside of that door. Friends, if you're listening to this right now and your heart's getting rattled, if you're saying, that's me, I don't want him to get that close because it seems like vulnerability has only ever brought me pain. Like I'm begging you, he's begging you to take the risk again, or take the risk for the first time, right? He's good. Like, and he's gone there first. That's the thing, right? That like he's the most vulnerable one. Vulnerability, the word, it means a willingness to get wounded, a willingness to be wounded, taking on the risk of being wounded. He is the most vulnerable one. He is the most wounded one. He's the one who stepped forth first and said, I open myself. His lanced and open heart, like that is, he said, I'll go there first because I know it's so scary. I know it's so scary. Like the lie that the enemy whispers into our hearts in this is like, just stay safely behind those walls with Jesus kept out on the outside. That's a safer move, he'll say. But it's not. What we end up doing, we just end up creating a coffin for our own hearts. That's what that is. Friends, like the gospel that we just heard, this gospel is happening right now in this Mass. This isn't a story. This isn't just a parable from 2,000 years ago. This is unfolding in the liturgy. This is what's happening in Mass. That some of us have kept Jesus at a distance on the outside of the door for so many years. Respectful, pious. You can keep a very pious facade with Jesus on the outside of the door for a long time. But no amount of casual contact with Jesus is ever going to change you. No amount of talking through the door, looking through the peephole is ever going to change you. Maybe we have a lot of head faith, but not a lot of heart faith. Like the faith that we hear in this gospel, the faith of Abraham that says, come on in, have your way. If you've kept him out for all these years, like he's not mad, he's not disappointed, he's just been patiently knocking. Like what is the attribute that Paul lists first when he describes love? Love is patient. He's so patient. And second of all, love is so kind. A lot of you know I was just in Oxford for a trip on C.S. Lewis, and you're going to hear a lot of C.S. Lewis from me over the next couple months, so just bear with me. But here's something I want to share. He says this in one of his books. Supposing we really found him, Jesus, God, it's always shocking to meet life where we thought we were alone. Look out, we cry, it's alive. And therefore, this is the very point at which so many draw back. I would have done so myself if I could, and proceed no further with Christianity. An impersonal God, well and good. A subjective God of beauty, truth, and goodness inside our own heads, that's better still. A formless life force surging through us, a vast power which we can tap, that's best of all. But God himself, alive, pulling at the other end of the cord, perhaps approaching at an infinite speed, the hunter, king, the husband, that is quite another matter. There comes a moment when the children who have been playing at burglars suddenly hush. Was that a real footstep in the hall? There comes a moment when people who have been dabbling in religion, that's man's search for God, keeping Jesus on the outside of the door, suddenly draw back. Supposing we really found him. We never meant it to come to that. Worse still, supposing he had found us. He's found us. He's found you. Right now, he's found you. The master has returned and he's knocking. He's looking for his bride to risk openness. Like the real God, the God who is fire and mercy and glory and majesty, the God who has a heart and a face is here. And he's saying, let me into your heart. Let me into your life, into every nook and cranny. And he's just begging you, will you surrender to me? I want us to take a few moments now just in some silence. And in our imaginations, I just want you to call to mind, maybe close your eyes, just call to mind. See yourself opening the door to Jesus, like the servants in this gospel. I want you to notice what happens in his eyes, like the moment the door's cracked ajar. I want you to notice how his face lights up. And then the question is, what will you do next? Amen.